Starring Barbara Billingsley, Hugh Beaumont, Tony Dow, and Jerry Mathers as the Beaver.
Hello and welcome to a brand new For Your Review. This is our one-on-one. I'm your host, Scott Birmingham, and I'm more than delightful. I'm ecstatic how I would say my kickoff guest for the year is. Who better to have than the very star, I consider him the star of Leave It to Beaver, the Beaver himself, Mr. Jerry Mathers. I want to welcome on For Your Review. Thanks for being here, Jerry.
Thank you for
having me. I appreciate that. You know, everybody probably has tons of questions that they have to ask you. My first question is, I'm going to go back to where are they now? What are you doing right now?
Well, I still work as an actor. I do a lot of stage work. I do a lot of personal appearances. But, you know, honestly, to be an actor right now, most of the things that I'm getting offered, I turn down because they're reality shows. And I just don't particularly want to do reality shows. So, but that's the way the media, especially for actors right now, they're a known personality. That's the way it's going.
I tell you, I was listening to an ABC radio show of Ron Owens back at KGO about 10 years ago, and you were going to be on his show. And the way he introduced you was the fact that, you know, I've had many people on this show, and it's a pretty heavily followed show. He goes, and not have I ever had a guest who had so many people want to meet him than Jerry Mathers. How does that make you feel, kind of knowing that, or does it not even affect you in any way, shape, or form?
I don't think it really affects me, but it's not that I don't appreciate it, it's just that I'm so very used to it, because Leave It to Beaver started in 1957. It's never been off the air, so it's something, and I was about 8 years old, so it's something I've known all my life. And a lot of times when you do a series, and I've done other series, you know, no one ever remembers you for it. So this is truly a great gift.
I remember that John Travolta once said he was doing Look Who's Talking To, and someone said to him, you know, how does it feel to be doing Look Who's Talking to You? And he goes, you know what? If I stopped acting tomorrow, I would be happy. Because when I was doing films like Saturday Night Fever, I was an icon. A lot of actors never even reach that point in their lives. To have said, you know, I was there means a lot to me, even if I don't do anything more. Having had Leave It to Beaver in your repertoire, on your resume, and it still stands out today, I mean, it's not faded in the shadows or anything. Do you feel kind of, is it a good thing to be able to represent that?
Yes, it is, and especially because it's such a very good show. All the Leave It to Beavers are from real life. All those things actually happened to a kid. Now, of course, they took several things that happened one after the other to different people, put them together for maybe even one show. But those are real things that happened to real kids. Leave It to Beaver is the longest running show in television history. It's never been off the air since 1957. Plays in 47 languages all over the world. So it's, you know, it's just truly remarkable. I can go and walk through airports especially, and people will come up to me and they start talking in their language, and because they don't realize that I don't speak their language. It's actually kind of interesting in Japan, because when I was little, you know, I was only like 7, 8 years old, they had a girl dub my voice. So that's really interesting to watch, because not only am I speaking Japanese, but I know it's a girl's voice. So it's truly a gift, and it's something I'm very, very happy with.
You know, in a lot of those shows, it was interesting too how they introduced every actor at the very beginning, and Jerry Mathers as the Beaver. You don't see that anymore. They don't really do anything like that anymore. Do you think that helped in getting your name out there, that they had that announcement of your name? And I mean, obviously, there hasn't been a lot of changes facially, where a lot of people had a lot of plastic surgery done. They're trying to retain that youthfulness to stay in the business. But, you know, and they just look totally different sometimes.
Yep.
Like, I can't believe that person was in a hit show. I mean, you still look pretty young, I gotta tell you.
Well, you know, as I say, I've had a great life. You know, I've done other things besides being an actor. But I went back to it because it's just so much fun. So, you know, I went to college, I was a banker, I was a commercial real estate person, and then I went back into acting in my 30s. So I did take a slight break in there and learned about the ways of the world, but I'll tell you, acting is probably the easiest job you can ever have and the most fun.
Talk a little bit about having gotten the role, playing it, and then kind of like, you know, the last day you guys are shooting and how that felt for you to leave that day on that set?
Okay. Well, I've been an actor since I was 2 years old. So I've worked with Hitchcock, I've worked with Bob Hope, I've worked with Alan Ladd, I could give you a resume of people that I've worked with. And when I went on the interview for Leave It to Beaver, they had almost 5,000 people on that interview. It was what they call a cattle call. So there weren't 5,000 in Hollywood, but they interviewed like 2,000 in New York, 1,000 in Chicago, and another 2,000. So it was a very, very long interview. And they would walk in, and they weren't even just looking for the Beaver. They were looking for the Beaver, Wally, and their friends. So they'd pick about 5 of you, march you in a room. One guy would say, yeah, we like him, we like him, we like the rest of you, thank you very much, but you know, and that went on for weeks and weeks, and with 5,000 people, you can imagine. And I had just joined the Cub Scouts, and it came down to about the last 5 people for the role of the Beaver. And my mom came to me and she said, oh, guess what, Jerry? And I liked to go to interviews. I liked working. It wasn't like my parents pushed me at all. My mom said, you got a call back on that show. We didn't even know what it was called, with all those other people. And I said, well, Mom, I can't go. And she said, what do you mean you can't go? I said, well, I've got my first Cub Scout meeting today, and it's right after school, and that's when the meeting is, so I won't have time. And my mom kind of went, Jerry, you know what? Your Cub Scout meeting isn't till like 4:30 or whatever, and this isn't like the mass cattle calls. There's only going to be about 5 or 6 people because they've got it down to the last few. So you'll just go there, we'll walk right in, we'll walk right out, and you know, you'll either get it or you won't. It's no big deal, but we should at least, since we've invested so much time, go to the thing. I said, well, that sounds okay as long as I can go to my Cub Scout meeting. But as those things always happen, they took another kid, and then another one, and I was sitting out in the room going, oh no, I'm going to be late. And I'm the kind of person that hates to be late. I'm usually on time if I can do it. So comes time for me, I'm the last one, I walk in, and they knew me pretty well by then. As I say, they interviewed 5,000 people and got it down to us. And they said, well, what's the matter, Jerry? You're awfully jumpy today. You're almost like you don't want to be here. And I said, I don't. I want to go to my Cub Scout meeting. And they said, okay, you can go. So all the other kids have been in there, half hour maybe. I walk in, I walk out. My mom says, Jerry, what happened? I said, well, they said, do I want to be here? I said, no, I want to go to a Cub Scout meeting. She said, and what did you tell them then? I said, bye. And she said, well, that probably wasn't the best thing because we've invested a lot of time, but yes, you can go to your Cub Scout meeting. And they called that night and said I had the job as the Beaver because they'd rather have a kid that wanted to go to a Cub Scout meeting than be an actor.
Wow.
So that's how I got the job.
And do you remember the last day on that set?
Yeah, you know, the last day we did a thing called Family Scrapbook. And we, nowadays when you do a series, sometimes you do 4, 12. We did 39 a year. Then we went to New York for 3 weeks. We went to Chicago for 2 weeks to meet the advertisers and do press. Okay. Then we came into Los Angeles and we started almost right up. We took a few weeks off. So it had been 6 long years. And although I loved it, I think it was a good time for it to end. Everybody was ready. So it was sad, but it was like when you graduate from high school or you know, whatever.
Right.
It was time for us to move on to other things, and we all did.
Right. How does it feel for you having invested that small point of your youth? And how old were you when you left that show?
I was about 12 or 13.
So you're on the cusp of being a teenager now.
Right, and that's the other thing. I wanted to go to regular school because I had a private tutor when I was doing Leave It to Beaver, so I had never been in school with other kids, and I wanted to play sports. When I went to high school, and it was my freshman year in high school, I was on the football team, the track team, the swimming team, and I couldn't have done that if I'd stayed with Leave It to Beaver. So that was another reason I wanted to go back to regular school.
Did you have the opportunity too, when you guys were doing Leave It to Beaver, to go to the other sets and visit the other kids on their sets, or not so much?
Not so much. Well, there weren't any other kids. I mean, we had Wagon Train. There was a Bachelor Father with Noreen Corcoran, but she was quite a bit older than me. Tony might have been a lot more interested in her, but I, you know, wasn't. She was like a teenager when I was 8. So, but you know, Spartacus was filmed there. I had worked with Hitchcock. I did the Trouble with Harry, and when the very first Leave It to Beaver, they had I get a haircut, or one of the first ones, and they got the top makeup artist in Los Angeles because I had to have a skull cap because I go to the barbershop, lose my money, Wally ends up cutting my hair, and it just looks terrible. So anyway, but that whole show, they kept him on, And for Psycho, he did the mother that they turn around at the end.
Oh, right.
So he brought in a skull that he had to take a human skull, and if you're 8 years old and somebody says, look at this skull, you go, oh, that's wonderful. Can I touch it? And he goes, yeah, you can help me put the hair on it. So we aged it and put the hair on it. So there were just all sorts of experiences like that that I never would have been able to do had I not done Leave It to Beaver.
Very interesting. You know, we're going to take a break.
Okay.
When we come back, we're going to bring Tony Study on, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about integrity casting, about acting as a whole. So we'll come back out at that. So let's come back. We're going to break, and then we're going to come back for part 2, and the CEO of Integrity Casting will be joining us, Miss Tony Study.